Alright. Alright, guys, you ready? I think this is going to be our new theme song for the show. Alright, gentlemen. Hop Nation. Back in the Box Productions. Coming at you with the OMC show. I am Mike, the original MC. And today I'm coming at you with the Week 4 wrap-up show. A day late, but the best things are worth waiting for. Alright, gentlemen. So, Week 4 was kind of a crazy one. We had some really solid performances. And we're going to go through all the games. Important note coming up. This Week 4 was the last week of no buys. So from here on out, until we hit the playoffs, there's going to be bye weeks. That's when things get real interesting. That's when team management becomes important. So really should be interesting to see how things progress after that. So this will be a good check mark to see kind of where we stand at almost a quarter mark of the season. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get involved with the Week 4 recap, and let's go ahead and chop it up. All right. So we come in, as I typically do. I'm starting on my own matchup. Incredibly important matchup for this week. So this was myself and the Southpaw, Craig Roloff. Now, if you remember previous to this, I had said Craig had just a monster start to the season. First of all, he's got a team that's just star-studded. A lot of scary names on it. And for the first 3 weeks of the season, he led the league in scoring every single week. The first 3 weeks, and obviously was 3-0. Also, he is in my division, and I had actually already lost despite scoring over 200 points the week before. And so effectively, if he were to beat me this particular week, he would not only have a 2-game lead in the division, but also have the tiebreaker at that time because he would have beat me head-to-head. So this was an incredibly important matchup. Happy to say that I got the victory, which now pulls us even in terms of record with tiebreaker in hand for the good fellas. 183-131. Southpaw Craig definitely had an off day in terms of production. Not that 183 points is anything to sneeze at. I mean, it was a good performance, but let's go ahead and start on my side of the ledger. Josh Allen, who had been he's either number 1 or number 2 quarterback the last 3 consecutive years, but he had gotten off to a relatively mundane start. Hadn't really done much rushing. Looked okay, but not great. Came out of his shell on this particular weekend, putting up a 52 spot against Miami. Look, at the end of the day, when you play versus the high-powered Dolphins, you need to put up points, and Buffalo succeeded on this particular weekend. 52 points from your quarterback is always nice. Relatively underperforming with Tony Pollard with 8. Josh Kelly, who's been filling in for Eckler, hopefully for the last game, with 6. Tyreek Hill didn't hit double digits on this particular game. Buffalo played him well. Only 9 points in a pedestrian effort. But, excuse me, did get 16 from Marquise Brown. Mark Andrews, welcome to 2023 season with 25 points. A wonderful game. Kenneth Walker, been very steady. Not a great game, but 13 points. Tyler Lockett with 9. Ravens D paying dividends versus a Cleveland team who was banged up. 24 points. 16 from my kicker. I've been getting nice production from him. And another Eagles win. I've had the Eagles coach the last 2 years. They've lost like 1 game in 2 years now. So they continue to give me the points. Add it all up, 183 points. Taking a look at the bench, nothing much of note here. So nothing really to touch on there. All right, on the Southpaw side, Justin Herbert versus Vegas. I think we all thought this was going to be a much more high-scoring game. Put up 22 points for Herbert. Did suffer a little bit of an injury, but I hear it was on the non-throwing hand. They're on bye this week, so not much to worry about. But 22 points for one of the top quarterbacks in the league, is slightly under what you need. James Cook, 13 points with Buffalo. This is a situation to watch. Take a look at Cook. He doesn't seem to be getting as much RB1 usage as we expected, but still he plays on a Buffalo team that should be putting up points pretty much on a week-in, week-out basis. 13 points on this day. Newly acquired Miles Sanders, 5 points versus Minnesota in a disappointing effort. Justin Jefferson, what can I say? The guy does it every single week, outpaces his projections, 26 points. Not much more you can say. Just know that he's going to get you something every week, week in, week out. Jamar Chase, newly acquired. Now, look, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase on the same team is a scary prospect. But, again, something's not quite right in Cincinnati. Now, I am of the opinion that Joe Burrow, even Joe Mixon, who I despise, Jamar Chase, these are talented players. I do think that Burrow's playing injured right now, and so eventually I do think that they'll come back. And I don't have the stats to back this up, but I do feel like Burrow has had seasons in the past where he started out slow and then really come on strong. So, in any event, Jamar Chase only 14 points, and then also was chirping after the game. So, I don't know. Something to watch in Cincinnati. It's not going great at the moment. Darren Waller only 5 points versus Seattle on a Monday night. Waller has been incredibly disappointing so far this year. The guy's a tremendous talent, and he's, the knock on him has always been injuries, but he's staying healthy. He's just not being utilized the way he should. Giants really looking terrible so far this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, once again, 16 points, steady Eddie, staying healthy, which is good. Calvin Ridley played in the London game and basically was non-existent. He had one catch for a 30-yard touchdown. Early on, I thought he was maybe poised to have a big game. It wasn't happening. Jacksonville won fairly handily versus Atlanta, but really wasn't a huge part of the game plan. Eagles defense, which I'm going to touch on one more in just a second, with 6 points, 5 from a kicker. Big win for the boys, gets him 8 points for the coach. Add it all up, 131 points wasn't enough, but here on the bench is the story. Cowboys defense. Now, I don't take a lot of guys to task here because I don't, I'm not exactly sure what the mindset is when making lineup decisions. Plus, in all the years I've been doing this, I make plenty of bad decisions. But for the life of me, I kept going back to check this roster, knowing that I was playing them this week, to see if he was going to switch out Eagles for Cowboys. Because I can't, for the life of me, understand why anyone would play the Eagles defense against Washington versus Cowboys defense against New England. And the only thing I could think of is this number right here. If you look, right? Eagles were projected for 15 points. Cowboys were projected to 14 points. But anyone that's looking at this knows that Washington plays the Eagles very, very tough. And New England is a mess offensively this year, and the Cowboys' defense has been playing lights out. I could not, for the life of me, understand that decision, but he made it. Now, Cowboys scored 33 points. Eagles got 6. The difference is 27 points, and that's less than what he lost by. So it didn't exactly cost him the game, but it sure would have made me sweat a lot more. Cowboys sitting on the bench with 33. 18 for Dobbs. Newly acquired Rachaad White with 10. Anyway, this was a huge divisional matchup. In a league where we have 14 weeks to the regular season, 4 weeks in, this one really was huge in terms of figuring out the division, which is still very much up in the air. But I think I would have been in big trouble had I lost this one. Happy to get the win. Goodfellas 3-1, Southpaw 3-1, and make no mistake about it. However, Southpaw is a dangerous team, and is most certainly going to be there at the end. Moving on. All right. Miamichi, best pizza in Florida. Hop. Vinny versus Rick Penner and the Polar Bears. Vinny gets the win, 174-157. Let's take a look at the Vinny side of the ledger. Jordan Love, 14 points. Jordan Love has quietly put together a great fantasy season. I want to say he's 4 or 5 in terms of ranked quarterback on a points basis, but it's been sort of quiet. Underwhelming in this matchup versus Detroit for 14. We got to talk about Christian McCaffrey, all right? Now, it's only 4 weeks in, okay? But I'm going to tell you when I'm right. I'm also going to tell you when I'm wrong. And I had a lot of concerns about CMC coming into this year. Now, again, only 4 weeks in, so still remains to be seen. But he's had a history of being on again, off again. And he was great last year. And this year I had concerns about him, which is why, frankly, I didn't draft him, despite the fact that he's, potentially the MVP running back on my favorite team. Passed on him, and he's just been lights out. He had an amazing game, 53 points. He scores a touchdown in every single game at least. In this one, he scored 4. And he's one of those potential league winners, a guy that can put you on his back. And, the trick is going to be the health factor, but so far so good, and he's just been trotted out there on every single snap. Amazing player. And 53 points on this day. Josh Jacobs finally breaks out, gets a nice 27-point effort. The trick is going to be, can he keep up with it? You know what I mean? That's going to be the trick. Jalen Waddle, 8 points. Devontae Smith, 14. George Kittle, only 1. Christian Watson finally coming back and playing, 10 points, not terrible. Mike Evans had quietly been putting together an amazing campaign on this particular year. Only 7 points on this one, and he did get injured as well. Jaguars defense in London, 28 points versus a really rough-looking Atlanta team. Big defensive effort by Jacksonville. Graham Gano, 7 points. Chiefs coach, 5. Excuse me 1 second, gentlemen. I need to stop the share for just a moment. Bear with me 1 second. Also, I don't know if you guys saw it, during the London game, they did something new with this whole Toy Story thing. Not sure if you guys saw it. I didn't really care for it, but the reason I mention it is I thought it was funny to hear people talk about how they couldn't watch the game from ESPN Plus, so they had to watch it on Disney Plus, where they were doing the Toy Story game. And funny seeing people react to the game watching it from Andy's bedroom. I think my brother made a comment that was hysterical. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so add it all up, you have 174 points. Taking a peek at the bench, nothing huge of note here, so we will move on. On the Polar Bear side, Justin Fields finally puts together a nice effort, 36 points. Jahmyr Gibbs, we'll touch on this in a second, but he only had 9 points, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. Bijan Robinson, this is interesting, right, because Atlanta continues to underwhelm offensively, and they have such a weird offensive identity. Kyle Pitts and Drake London are virtually afterthoughts, more so with Pitts. And Bijan Robinson is such a dynamic player, and they seem to use him all over the field. But Atlanta can't get out of their own way. But Bijan continues to get his numbers. 23 points and a nice effort. And the guy really is a phenomenal running back from what I can tell. He's shifty. He can play in multiple spots. You got to wonder if he's going to reach his potential with Atlanta, though. Devontae Adams with 15, had a bit of a shoulder injury in this one, but was able to come back. Tank Dell, 3 points. This is a guy, Tank Dell, who was a free agent darling a couple of weeks ago, and he has the potential in what's looking like a pretty good offense in Houston, but only 3 points on this particular effort. This might be one of those things where you're just not quite sure when he's going to show up. Kyle Pitts doing Kyle Pitts things. 4 points, Atlanta. I don't get it. Did the guy just forget to play football? No. This is the Atlanta game plan, and it's tough to see, Jonnu Smith, the other tight end in Atlanta. It's tough to see him getting all the run, while a guy who was, considered a phenom at the position just continues to languish. You got to assume that the Kyle Pitts experiment's going to end fairly soon in Atlanta. Anyway, DeAndre Swift, 17 points. DJ Moore, a nice Fields-Moore stack on this particular game. DJ Moore, 32 points. Bengals D, 7. Kicker, 6. Coach, 5. Add it all up, 157 points. So this was a, 17-point deficit. And on the bench, tells you the reason why. And look, I'm not getting on Rick for this decision because the guy was just coming back from injury and you didn't quite know what to expect. But take a look at Mr. Montgomery. 39 points sitting on the bench. And let me remind you, Jahmyr Gibbs had 9. Okay? That would have been a 30-point swing. The deficit was only 17 if Montgomery's in the starting lineup. Polar Bears get a victory on this particular day. Challenging, upsetting, I don't mean to point it out, but it's just one of those things that's kind of interesting. Montgomery looks like he's playing to keep his job. While we all think that Gibbs is a supreme talent, I don't know if he's going to, get enough run to take over the position this year, barring a Montgomery injury, which he just had. Anyway, add it all up, 174-157. Vinny gets the win. 1-3 Polar Bears, 2-2 for Vinny's Miamichi Ball Club. Lots of time left to go here. This was an interesting matchup, though. Okay, moving on. Polish Powers, 148. Chosen Ones, 110. Uh-oh, we're running out of battery power here. Oh my goodness. Alright. So I'm going to do some double duty here. And I'm going to go get my charger while I do this. So 140 went to 110. Now, Chris, unfortunately, so he has pulled off a few trades. But he's, they haven't really quite worked out. But, he's still making some changes to his team. But he's currently at 0-4. I believe the only team in the division without a victory, and that's not a great spot to be in. So we'll see what he's able to do to pull out of this. I thought he might have a chance, but game script didn't go his way on the Monday Nighter with Geno Smith. Let's take a look at what we're working with here. So on the Chosen One side, Geno Smith with 9, Jerome Ford with 8, newly acquired Raheem Mostert with 4. And again, this is one of the examples where this is a trade that he made to acquire Mostert. He probably got him at the wrong time because it looks like A-Chain is taking over out there versus Miami. So, Mostert's going to be one of those guys that should be interesting to see what his role is moving forward. But he just might be a high-level backup. And unfortunately, it looks like a starting running back was traded away for him. Brandon Ayuk is putting together a nice campaign, has a nice connection with Brock Purdy, 25 points. CeeDee Lamb with 14. Your team wins 38-3. You'd like to see the receiver, the number one receiver on a Dallas team that put up 38 points have a little bit better production, but 14 points was the was the number for this game. Luke Musgrave, 1 point, left with injury. It remains to be seen whether or not he plays this week. Joe Mixon with only 7. Tutu Atwell with 7. 49ers, 6 points versus the Cardinals. Kind of sad when your second highest point getter on the team is a kicker with Brett Maher, 21 points. And Bills with a big victory for 8 points. Add it all up, 110 points, not much to speak about. And, unfortunately, looking on the bench, fortunately and unfortunately, because there were no lineup decisions that were incorrect. Not much on the bench to look at. Chosen ones have some work to do in this season. Hopefully he stays with it. Polish Powers, 11 points from Tua Tagovailoa. This is disappointing because you got to figure Miami-Buffalo is going to be a shootout, high-scoring game. Buffalo just outplayed him. Tua was underwhelming on this game, 11 points. Travis Etienne, only 9 points. Kyren Williams, the surprise Kyren Williams. Well, surprise to some. 32 points in a really nice effort versus Indy. A couple of touchdowns, really looking like an RB1. Garrett Wilson with 15. The Jets, boy, we all watched Jets Kansas City. Did we watch Zach Wilson grow up in this game? Because all of a sudden he looked like he remembered how to play football. Should be interesting to see how he does this particular week, but it could be something to give Jets fans a little bit of excitement that maybe this season isn't a lost cause, and that would be good for Garrett Wilson as well. 15 points on this game. Keenan Allen, 12 points in a winning effort versus Vegas. Hawkinson with 4 points. Scary Terry, 22 points. Isaiah Pacheco from RU, 29 points. Had a great game. This is not typical for him, but he is the starting running back in what could be a high-powered offense. And Kansas City turned to the run very quickly in this game as Mahomes was not quite on his game. Bears defense with only a single point versus Denver. 6 from the kicker, 7 from your coach. Add it all up, 148 points on this particular day. It was enough. Nothing much to speak of on the bench except for this gentleman right here in the IR spot, Jonathan Taylor. Did not have an impact, of course, week 4 because he was still out. However, he is now off injured reserve, or the practice window is open. So he is someone to keep an eye on. What's going to happen in Indy? Is he going to play for Indy? Is Indy still going to trade him, which doesn't seem likely? Is he going to continue to hold out? Should be interesting to see how that plays out. One of the interesting NFL stories on this particular season. Polish Powers 3-1 with potential reinforcements coming, looking strong. Chosen Ones 0-4. Unfortunately, the only team in the league without a win. But again, there's still time. Bye weeks are coming. That tends to level the playing field a little bit because you may play a stronger team who has, guys out and pull off a victory. This one's not over yet. Moving on. We talked about the one winless team. Let's talk about the one undefeated team. Moro's Vikings sitting in at 4-0. The only unblemished team in the league. And he pulls out a victory over Matt and the R Chop, 174-151. Let's talk about this one. Jalen Hurts, 35 points. It was the Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown show because A.J. Brown put up a 49 spot. Boy, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, they say, right? Really solid game with Philly versus Washington in terms of the connection between those two. Overall, Philly, had to fight for this one. They did get the victory. But Washington always plays them tough. Alexander Madison, 10 points, not great. Zach Moss. Now, this is going to be interesting. Morrow picked up Moss, and he was integral in beating me last week, even though I put up over 200 points, because Zach Moss had a great game. What's Moss's role going to be if Taylor comes back? Has Moss played well enough for Indy to play, hardball against Jonathan Taylor, who frankly is one of the best backs in the league? has Moss given them enough to where they say, you know what, kick rocks, Should be interesting to see. But if Moss comes in and is relegated to a backup role, that's kind of unfortunate for Morrow in this case, because he's really played well given the starting opportunity. Deebo Samuel, this was the most interesting stat line of the week for me, because Deebo Samuel came in and he put up 0 points. He didn't even get a catch in the game. And this goes into what I've been saying. I have said for a while now, and again, a little peek behind the curtain, because I am a Niners fan and I do follow them closely. Brandon Ayuk, to me, is the best pure wide receiver on that team. I know everybody loves Deebo, and Deebo always gets drafted ahead of him and everything. And I'm a Deebo fan too, but Deebo's a gadget player. He's a guy that, he's gonna take the end arounds. He's gonna do different things. But a game like this, I mean, maybe not no catches. That was a little bit of an outlier. But games like this where he underperforms as a receiver are not a surprise to me on that team. Anyway, he gets him a 0. Doesn't matter on this game. Travis Kelce, and all the fucking Taylor Swift stuff is just incredibly annoying. But anyway, 12 points, not a great game. And as noted by avid Jets fan Matt, we were talking about this game. The Jets don't cover tight ends very well, so you thought Kelce might have a better game. Not on this particular night. DeAndre Hopkins with 10. Thielen with 14, coming back to earth. Chiefs with 7 points versus the Jets. 22 points from the kicker. Big kicker points, it feels like this week. Anyway, 6 points from your coach. Add it all up, you got 174 points in a pretty big effort. Just looking at the bench, Khalil Herbert. This is unfortunate, right? 26 points sitting on the bench, but I don't blame you for sitting them, because Chicago's looked terrible. And when everybody's talking about Roschon Johnson taking over as the starting running back, and Herbert comes in and says, not so fast. I mean, but can you trust this guy? I don't know. Nothing else really to speak of on the bench here. Looking at Matt's point total for the week, Lamar Jackson really starting to. What makes him so dangerous is the running ability, and he just continues now to get some rushing touchdowns. 28 points and a really nice effort versus Cleveland. One of the other reasons that's such a big deal is Cleveland is a phenomenal defense, but Baltimore was the better team on this day. James Conner had to figure he was going to struggle versus a really talented San Francisco defense, only 6 points. Breece Hall, oh my God, this one could have been different. We all watched it. Breece Hall had like one man to beat for like a 70-something yard touchdown, which would have changed the whole complexion of this game, and probably may have even resulted in a win for Matt. But it wasn't to be, and he ended up with only 9 points on the day. Stephon Diggs, 47 points. Huge. We were talking about it as it was happening. Allen to Diggs, the brother connection. Big game for Diggs versus a Miami team where you knew you were going to need some points. DK Metcalf, 12 points. Cole Kmet decided to resurrect on this particular day and ended up with 27 points. Who knows if he will remain involved as a top flight tight end, but he had been non-existent up to this point. Disappointing effort for Chris Olave, only 1 single point, only 4 points from Pittman, 3 points from the defense, 6 from your kicker, 8 from the coach. It's that back end, it's those flex positions for Matt's team on this particular day that really cost him the most, but still 151 point effort, solid game. Just not quite enough. Looking at the bench, Mr. A-Chain. I know that's not how you pronounce it, but that's how we will pronounce it. Mr. A-Chain, 31 points on the bench. Has he finally arrived? Possibly. It's going to get a little complicated in Miami because Wilson's going to come back. Obviously, there's injury concerns with both Mostert and Wilson. A-Chain is young, fresh legs. We'll see. He's a fast player on a team that has a lot of fast players, so could be someone to watch. C.J. Stroud quietly putting together a very nice fantasy season with 36 points at the quarterback position. Don't think he's ever going to get in this starting lineup with Lamar Jackson, but if Jackson were to get hurt, Stroud is a guy that you don't have to worry about plugging in, so it would seem. Anyway, on that note, Matt falls just short, 174 to 151. Morrow, as I mentioned, is 4-0, the only undefeated team in the league, and Matt evens up at 2-2. But there's a lot of talent on this team, and no doubt will be there in the end. Last matchup. So the only team to not eclipse 100 points this particular week, never a good distinction. The Brooklyn Baller, other MC, loses by 80 points to Rick Erdlin and the Scooters Boys. Let's see how it happened. So on the Brooklyn Baller side, ballsy move sitting Patrick Mahomes for Kirk Cousins. It wouldn't have mattered on this day, but Kirk Cousins puts up a dud after being, I believe, the number one ranked quarterback in terms of fantasy points so far this season. Only puts up 11. Ramondre Stevenson versus Dallas, only 6 points, a top flight defense. Jaylen Warren with 10 points. Addison puts up a bagel, a 0. You never want to see that. And then there's Nico Collins, 46 points. Big day. Big day. Represents almost half of the total points for the Brooklyn Baller. A single point for Taysom Hill. Other MC has been a Taysom Hill lover the last 2 years. Continues to want to roll him out. Every now and then he catch lightning in a bottle. The problem is more often than not, he does this with 1 point. Aaron Jones still not quite recovered from the hamstring with only 2 points. George Pickens with 5. Jets defense versus Kansas City played rather well, 15 points. Mr. 8th round Justin Tucker, only 4 points on this particular day. A -6 from the head coach of the Browns, who took a big loss versus Baltimore. Add it all up, 94 points. It's not much. Looking at the bench, there's not much to speak of here either. So better days hopefully to come, but not a good week this week. Scooters Boys, Russell Wilson, 26 points in a crazy comeback effort versus the Chicago Bears. Derrick Henry decided to emerge on this week with 31 points. Alvin Kamara had probably the most interesting stat line of the week. I think I mentioned it when it was happening. I think he had like 14 targets, 13 catches for like 30 yards. Never seen anything like it before. But because we are a PPR league, he gets 21 points for all those catches. Chris Godwin, 24. Puka Nacua, 36 points. And in terms of NFL stories, this is something to watch as well. Is Puka Nacua going to maintain the same role when Cooper Kupp comes back? Or is Cooper Kupp even going to come back? I was surprised to read this morning that it is heading into week 5. He's eligible to come off, but he's on the wrong side of 50-50 to play this week. So he's not healthy yet? I think this Cooper Kupp thing is going to be one to watch, and Puka Nacua may be the biggest beneficiary, because I don't know if his production can hold when Cooper Kupp returns, if he returns. Evan Engram with 12, Najee Harris with 11, Cortland Sutton with 11. Never want to see a negative from your defense, but a -4 from Pittsburgh it is. 11 from your kicker Harrison Butker, and Pittsburgh another -5 from the head coach. Add it all up, 174 points. Not much of note on the bench here, except for the aforementioned Cooper Kupp. That is a story to watch, and it is interesting that on this particular team, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are rostered together. That's going to be an interesting one to see what happens when he makes his return. Both these teams coming in at 1-3, and some work to be done, but especially on the Scooters Boys side, looks like reinforcements potentially could be coming. And that's it, gentlemen. That is all I have for the Week 4 wrap-up. It has been, excuse me, it has been a very interesting week or year so far. And on that note, bye weeks are coming, so get your lineups right. pay attention, and let's see what we can do the rest of the way. On that note, I don't really have much more else to say. It's been a relatively long video, so we're going to go out the same way we came in, and I'm going to give you some the OMC new theme music. And you gentlemen have a wonderful week, and we'll catch up with you later. Alright guys, appreciate you watching. Hope you're enjoying the videos. If so, let me hear about it. This has been the original MC. Thrilled to be back in the box with you, talking hot Week 4 football. Be well.